Hopefully you found those videos as interesting as I did. I think the Gaza case touches on a whole host of different issues we'll see over the course of the semester and are worth your time becoming familiar with and talking about the different costs and benefits for different actions. I have a link in the lecture notes to an article by Daniel Byman about why the Gaza Strip hasn't escalated, the war between Israel and Hamas hasn't escalated to full-time conflict. There was those bombings and violence, as the video talked about, in May of 2021. There is escalation every couple months, and I spent a couple of weeks on a study tour in Israel and Palestine, over a decade ago. And I really think until I went there, I'd been coming from the United States. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is one of those existential and important political and cultural conflicts that are on the minds of people who study international relations. I don't think in the Australian context it has that kind of same visceral effect. I can't think of any conflict that would kind of come close to that. Potentially East Timor, which is now over 2 decades old, would be a recent example in Australia, potentially ones in the Philippines or Myanmar. But this is one that has drawn in international actors for decades. One of the first multilateral UN interventions, peacekeeping missions, was in the Israeli and Palestinian territories in 1948, and all of it is incredibly small. This is a map of the Gaza Strip, and that coastline there is only 40 kilometers long. You have a population of about 2 million people living in an incredibly small, dense, and urban area. A couple of facts about the Gaza Strip that I think are relevant to try to understand the situation. Is that almost 2 million people in an area that's less than 1/6 of the ACT. The ACT has about 500,000 people in the entire area, and as I said before, it's the most densely populated state or territory in Australia, but it's still dramatically less densely populated than the Gaza Strip. The population density is over 5,000 people per square kilometer, while in the ACT it's 151. The average age, or the median age, is 18, 77% urbanized, and official unemployment figures put it around 27%, with youth at 42%. Others will say that it's actually substantially higher. If you look at the population pyramid in the Gaza Strip, you do see a bit of flattening at the bottom for the ages under 15, but it is an area in which you have a large, densely populated area with population growth that is facing incredible hardships, both at an individual level as well as the borders and the blockade by the Israeli forces. There's been a lot of subsequent violence in that area, and if you look at the graph between Hamas and Israel, you do see those time periods in which the violence flares up. And I really think that with the optimism in the 1990s and the early aughts has kind of faded away as there being any hope for a two-state solution. I think both sides don't really see, I mean, if there's no easy way out, but a way that there could be a negotiated settlement. And a lot of people will say that Israel is just kind of waiting them out, that the current situation benefits the Israeli side. And I think the occupied territories, I went on a couple tours of the buildings and infrastructure in the occupied territories, and then I went myself to the Palestinian side. There's a huge qualitative difference in the infrastructure spending in those areas. However, there is a demographic and population issue that is not going away, and that is, as of a couple of years ago, there by all evidence parity, at least parity between the Jewish and the Arab populations within Israel and Palestine. And there's a lot of interesting discussions you can find on YouTube if you're interested about the dilemma the Israeli state faces. Are they, and they've put themselves forward, especially after 9/11, as a beacon of democracy in the region, and after 2011 as well, and that reputation as a democracy is now under threat if the Jewish population is outnumbered by the Arabic population. And if there is a one-state solution, if the Palestinians are given the right to vote, then it would no longer be considered a Jewish state. And so you have this tension between social and cultural and political from World War I and World War II reasons for wanting to have it as a Jewish state, and that Zionist ideal, and on the other side, the democratic ideal. And so you have these competing pressures for the citizens and the population, and you have different perspectives in the Jewish population as the support for it. But they're really, you have these demographic realities bumping up against political realities, and to what extent that gap can become large enough that there might be escalation is something that we're going to see. Another thing that we've seen and we will see in subsequent weeks is the connection to safe drinking water, and that one of those videos that I put in before this one, I think viscerally shows the challenges that people have both for basic sanitation as well as clean drinking water in the Gaza Strip. And now today, as I'm recording this, is World Water Day. I think it's ironic, and that it is a fundamental challenge that a lot of governments face that we don't necessarily face here in the ACT, but is still an ongoing challenge and can drive people in those areas in which there is scarcity that we've seen overall this week and subsequent weeks, that can just drive people to move, which is a nice kind of segue to next week's discussion about domestic and international migration. So with that, thank you for your time. Hopefully, in my discussion here about population change, demographic shifts with the different age groups, and the effects of urbanization on conflict, that's given you some ideas for how all these things fit together, and how population is an important building block for our theories of conflict that we're going to see for the rest of the term, as well as for our discussion in workshop, and for those of you who are doing it on your own, about the relative importance and how these factors connect to each other in trying to help us understand the myriad causes of conflict. With that, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you soon.